Now, when is public space private? The issue's been brought sharply into focus by an incident at the Braehead shopping centre near Glasgow over the weekend, in which a father was questioned by security guards and the police after taking photos of his own daughter eating ice cream. David Allison reports.
These days, most of us have one. Some of us even have up-to-date ones. And pulling a phone out of your pocket, taking a picture and posting it online is now so common it's completely unremarkable. Unless, of course, you're Chris White, who bought his daughter an ice cream at the Braehead shopping centre near Glasgow and thought he would take a snap or two. Security guards approached him, telling him there was a no photography policy and asking him to delete the photos for security reasons. The incident escalated and the police got involved.
Had the security guard, had the police used some common sense, this wouldn't be a story.
But now it is, and the police are standing their ground, citing the fight against global terrorism.
I don't think anything's a waste of police time if it comes to the fact that we have to investigate things. As I said, the most innocent looking thing may be something much more sinister, and we'll only establish that by investigating them.
You could say the great outdoors is another example of a battleground between public and private space. Where you can and can't walk in the countryside remains the subject of court cases, despite right to roam legislation. So where do we stand legally in terms of shopping centres and our mobile phones?
It's up to the operators of the shopping centre to decide the basis on which you come into their shopping centre, so they can set out terms and conditions, and that can include a ban on photography if they so wish. And I understand that was the case in point. However, it's all about bringing these conditions to people's attention.
In a statement tonight, Braehead Shopping Centre said they'd listened to the very public debate surrounding their photography policy and, as a result, with immediate effect, they were changing it to allow family and friends to take photos in the mall. The centre added they would publicise this more clearly in the mall and on their website, but would reserve the right to challenge suspicious behaviour for the safety and enjoyment of their shoppers. No one from Braehead Shopping Centre was available to do an interview with us, and they wouldn't let us inside to do any filming. However, they said we could do some filming outside in the car park. Of course, no such restrictions apply here. Buchanan Street is a public thoroughfare and we're free to film without permission. However, there are some places in cities now where we would need permission because they're patrolled or owned by private companies. City streets are not always what they seem. A bit further down the river, things get a bit more complicated. We can film on this bridge, a right-of-way, because it's public and there's no kind of issue about access or anything like that. But step over this line here, the land's owned by the Science Centre, and we need permission, even if we just want to film our own building. What's public and what's private isn't always so straightforward. So, you can walk, but you can't film, unless the Science Centre gives permission, which they kindly did this time. But with Glasgow City Council trying to demand permission for filming on George Square, and not just Brad Pitt, but news crews as well, you could argue there's a subtle change creeping in unnoticed. Chris White certainly thinks so.
Shopping centres need to be aware that they're public spaces. They quite often hold events that encourage the taking of photographs. So, they need to take a consistent approach to this issue. If they want to behave like a public space, then in public spaces, families take photographs of their kids.
In years gone by, the countryside was the big issue over right to roam. With that matter largely settled, we've won the countryside. But is there a danger? We could be losing our towns and urban environment.
Well, Les Gray, Chairman of the Scottish Police Federation, is still with me, and I'm joined from Dundee by the sociologist and criminologist Dr Stuart Waiton. Les Gray, first of all, should this ever have become a police matter?
I cannot comment on that, Glenn. The bottom line is here that we have trial by social media with this whole incident. What we have is this gentleman who has posted this in his Facebook sign, and it's grown arms and legs, and all of a sudden we've got 10,000 signatures, if that's to believe, of people saying this is an outrage. But ultimately, what we have here is one gentleman's version of events. The police are still carrying out an inquiry into the incident, as far as I'm aware. The gentleman's made a police complaint. That will be investigated thoroughly. The police will look at the CCTV. They'll interview the staff surrounding that area. They'll interview the security guard. They'll speak to the police officers. and they'll interview other staff who may be potential witnesses. And until that time, I have very real fears about the use of social media for this type of thing, because what we still have here is one gentleman's versions of events. And I'll give you a very quick scenario that I was involved in.
Just hold that thought there, because I want to bring in Stuart Waiton, who was smiling throughout much of your answer to that question. Why was that?
Well, the police hate the public. You know, the public are this body that are potentially not in their control. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that thousands of people have gone on and pressurised Braehead to get rid of this absolutely ridiculous form of legislation. I mean, if I could repose the question you've put, the balance between public and private, the question I would say is, where is public? I mean, we have so many rules today, so much CCTV camera, regulation of smoking, drinking. Yeah, even if you set up a cake stand, you need about 10 regulations to do that. You need vetting if you're going to work with any kids or even go anywhere near a kid. If you're going to have a Santa Claus at a community centre, that needs to be regulated. You know, my uncle is an umpire in England, and he tells me he has now been instructed to watch out for anyone taking a photograph at a cricket game if there is a junior around, and he has to run off the pitch and ask the person why he's taking a photograph. So,
okay, well, let me bring in...
There's a real problem of the level of regulation and policing of public space, which has gone to a phenomenal degree.
Let me pick up on exactly that point with Les Gray. What is the problem with people taking photos?
The problem with people taking photographs is, unfortunately, history has taught us, and previous cases have taught us, that people who are paedophiles, people who prey on children, who prey on other people, it's been well proven. And if you look at all the recent cases of people going about shopping centres, videoing under women's skirts, if you remember the documentary, the American case where the girl was kidnapped. Let me finish, please. Where the girl was kidnapped. The gentleman that did that, now, if I forget the girl's name, started off by pretending to take photographs. Let me finish, please. Let me finish.
Let him finish.
He started off by taking photographs of his wife/partner, allegedly, and it turns out he was actually taking photographs of children behind him. Now, I am not linking that in any way, shape or form to this particular case. What I am saying is that a member of staff allegedly thought this was suspicious enough to contact security, and security contacted the police. You cannot condemn a member of the staff for that, and you cannot condemn the police for that until such times as a proper inquiry has been carried out.
Stuart Waiton, I mean,
let me finish, please.
We haven't got a lot of time, I'm afraid. Stuart Waiton, I mean, isn't it good that people are trying to be vigilant and that the police are prepared to look into matters like this to make sure that there isn't a danger?
To conclude, you cannot
let me bring in Stuart Waiton on that.
It is a problem. I mean, I can understand that the mindset of a policeman is to have more regulations for everything and to distrust everyone. That's their job. Unfortunately, politicians seem to have a similar mindset, and local authorities are introducing massive amounts of legislation that encourage us to be distrustful of everybody and to be limited from doing the most basic things like taking photographs of our own children. Which is not an unusual thing.
Terrorism is a real threat, isn't it?
Well, terrorism is a threat. That doesn't mean we should regulate the whole of civic society and every individual taking a photograph on the basis that he may be a potential terrorist. That's the formation of a not far from being a police state.
Les Gray, when you look at the statement tonight from the shopping centre, they've revised their policy. It's now OK to take pictures of family and friends.
Yes.
Is that a sensible decision?
Yeah, that's up to the shop centre. That's not for me to say. But to conclude, as I said earlier on, before the doctor came up with his ridiculous comment about the police hating the public, is that I am not judging this situation. What I am saying is, do not let a social network or social media site put this on trial, and that's what's happened here today. We have got one person's version, and all of a sudden it's gospel, and we've got another 10,000 people joining in, including my learned friend there from Dundee, once again joining in, and he's not aware of the circumstances, neither am I. So until such times as those circumstances are inquired into and verified, then nobody should be making a comment on it. It's a simple fact. Had the other side of the coin, what if somebody who saw this incident and put an incident of someone on Facebook to say, I saw this and this gentleman was doing this and doing that, when quite clearly, according to him, it wasn't. People wouldn't be happy, and that's the danger of social network sites.
Okay.
People post something and it's taken as gospel.
Les Gray and Stuart Waiton, thanks both very much indeed. We didn't really get into the public-private space issue. Perhaps that's another Newsnight. Thanks very much indeed.